So for years, I've been promoting high-end, boutique-style, American-made cast iron. People leave comments constantly that I should just take a cheap Lodge pan and just sand it down, and it's as good as one of my Field pans or Stargazer or whatever. And I've always been like, oh yeah, great, fine, whatever. But I've never got around to it. And it definitely did make me curious. Like, am I promoting a pan that is maybe unnecessarily expensive? Could you just take a Lodge pan and sand the textured inner surface of the pan and make it as good as a high-end boutique pan? I didn't know. So I've decided I'm going to tackle this challenge. So I'm not a gigantic fan of the design of Lodge when it compared to any of the boutique pans that you'll find that, granted, are maybe 5 times the money of a really inexpensive Lodge pan, but this is the best pan on the market for the dollars. You can't find a better cast iron pan anywhere. Maybe Victoria cast iron out of Columbia is going to be comparable, but really Lodge just kills it when it comes to quality for dollar. But that said, I don't love the little stubby handle. I find that it's got a kind of a sharp finish on the handles. There's just things that I don't love about the pan when I'm comparing it to high-end boutique pans. But let's get past that part. And today we're just going to talk about the inner surface. So these pans are being ground down and shown on videos on YouTube many times. So it's not that it can't be done. It definitely can be done. And there's some great examples of being done. But my take on it today is, can I make it as good as a Field pan? So a Field number 8, I've got one of the original Fields here. And can I grind the surface and make this guy work just as well as my really well-conditioned Field pan? My Field pan, as you'll see in the video, needs some work. It's kind of near the end of its life of this seasoning. I need to strip it down and redo it. It doesn't look phenomenal, but it actually is working just great. It just aesthetically needs some work. But I'm going to grind this down using this angle grinder with a 60 grit angle grinder attachment. And then depending how the pan feels, I'm going to go by the feel of it. I may go up to 120 grit with this orbital sander. What I want to be really hyper focused on is that when I've talked to the owners, founders of some of the boutique makers of cast iron, we've talked a lot about the struggles that they had initially of trying to get their surface to take and hold the seasoning. So I want to be really careful about getting too highly polished. I've seen some examples as I was doing research for this video of people that really polished the surface, and there's going to still be micro texture, but even I know from having other brands that we've tried to season, the seasoning sometimes can start to fail when it is too highly polished. So I'm going to be looking to try to mimic the feeling of a Field or a Stargazer, but I'm comparing Field today, and I'm going to try to get it as close as I can so it's going to hold and keep a good seasoning over a long period of time. But let's get to it. So first we're going to start with the 60 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to try to go as careful as I can. I'm not super mechanically inclined. I don't work with tools all the time, so I'm kind of hacking it a little bit here. So I'm going to do my very best to try to get as an even finish as I possibly can. These pans do work incredibly well without doing what I'm doing, but I want to see if I can make it even work better. So let's see. Okay, that guy's looking pretty good. So, you know, it's definitely not perfect. I wasn't trying to get a high polish out of this thing. I was just really trying to take that candy coating shell off. Now it's pretty smooth. I was using the 60 grit and the angle grinder, and then I went into the 120 quickly just to kind of take out some of the big lines with 120 grit. Then I went back to a 60 grit using just a hand sanding just to give it texture all over, to try to get something for it to kind of grab onto. And so it's a little bit chunky looking. It's not beautiful. I kind of want to polish it so it's like gleaming, but I know that's the wrong thing to do. So I'm just going to go with it from here. I'm getting onto my camp stove. I'm going to crank the heat up here. We're going to do an outside style stovetop cooking where I'm going to create some smoke. I'm a big advocate of not creating smoke on the inside. When you're cooking inside, you don't need to polymerize, but we're going to do this just in a little bit of expedited sort of way. And I'm going to do it on the stove top. So here we go. Okay, I'm going to crank some heat up on that guy. I've already got some seasoning paste on there. So I'm using Cook Culture beeswax seasoning paste on there, combination of beeswax and grapeseed oil and canola oil. I've also got, this is a 4 ounce. This comes in a 2 ounce size. And right now I've actually got a promo on these. So you can get a seasoning kit that is a chainmail to 2 ounce of these beeswax pucks and a seasoning cloth. All for 10% off right now. So that is on our website, and you just click through using the link in the description. Okay, so we're gonna get some heat on here. As I was saying, this already has some seasoning on it. So we're just gonna let this guy heat up. I'm gonna continue just to get more and more seasoning, and we're gonna get this nice and golden brown. Okay, so this pan ended up looking pretty gorgeous. I'm actually really happy with the way in which it looks on the inside. It looks like a really nice carbon steel pan that's just got its first seasoning. So it's taken its first seasoning really well. I've got it preheating. I've got my field pan preheating. I'm a little more optimistic and a little more excited than I originally was with this. I'm really happy with how that turned out. It looks like a really nicely finished pan. So I've kind of switched my expectations. I think I'm probably going to get something fairly similar. I would assume there's no reason why not. But I'm going to get these pans preheated. I'm going to use a combination of olive oil and coconut oil. And we're going to fry an egg in each pan and see how it turns out. All right, let's see how we're going here. First, look, this one here, if you look closely, this guy, see how he's bubbling a little bit away? That just looks looser. This guy here, not getting much movement, doesn't look looser, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that one is just sliding around without any help. This one here, let's see, this is a first seasoning, so it isn't totally fair to a very seasoned pan, but you should be able to take any iron pan new, give it a seasoning, and it should work, technically. Like a seasoning, really the purpose of a seasoning is to protect it from oxidization. Seasoning over time, it will help. Yeah, so, okay. That one over. That one over. I don't know. Let's finish these up and I'll inspect the pans. So we get those guys off. So, Field, and freshly done Lodge pan. So I've textured it so that it grabs that seasoning, but it's definitely grabbing onto the egg. So what I'm going to do is use this a little bit more, give it a little bit more time, come back to it. We'll do the same experiment and see if I can get this guy to win. Okay, so I've cooked a few more things in this pan, and I've scoured it down with chainmail, got it really good and clean, and I did another seasoning with beeswax, and I've got some more coconut oil and olive oil. So we got quite a bit in there. And we're gonna try another egg and see where we get to. So. All right. So let this guy cook through, and I'm gonna see if we get a better result. Like I looked at last time, we don't have a lot of kind of bouncing of the egg. You kind of see when the egg's on the surface, it's kind of bouncing away. But that is actually a lot better. Oh, look at that. Okay, that is way, way, way better than we did the first time, isn't it? Okay, so, yep, that is, that's looking fine. Okay, so we're gonna let that finish up, and then we'll see the results of the pan when we're done. Okay, so we took a field pan that in Canadian dollars is like $235. I think it's like $145 in US dollars. We took a Lodge pan that is, you know, it can be as cheap as $20 sometimes. I've seen them advertised, you know, Costco and that sort of thing down the States. Up here in Canada, they're $45, $55, but still a pretty massive difference, $200 difference. The pan, as I was saying at the beginning, pan to pan is design, there's no comparison. The Field or a Smithy or a Stargazer, the way the whole pan is made is just absolutely gorgeous and incredibly well designed. It is an heirloom piece. However, from this simple experiment of, you know, a fairly inexpensive fix, I think I spent $10 or $12 on the sanding disc on an angle grinder I had. It took me maybe 5 minutes to get it all ground down and smooth. Then I had to just season the pan. That's a regular process. And I actually did this very quickly. Usually I would season this 3 times in the oven. I did this 1 time on the stovetop. You know, granted, I did it in an expedited sort of way that I wouldn't do inside. I did this on an outside style because I created quite a lot of smoke. But I struggled a little bit at the beginning, as you saw, and then I cooked some other things. I scoured it down with chainmail, I re-seasoned it, and I got basically the exact same results as I would in a field pan. That fried egg turned out beautifully. That to me is basically a non-stick result. So those people that have tried up in the past and said, hey, just grind down a Lodge pan and save yourself a bunch of money, absolutely. That is a great thing. If you have a Lodge pan and you want a nicer surface to work with, like I really enjoy putting my spatula along this surface, and the smoothness of it, it feels like a higher quality pan when you get rid of that candy coated shell that just feels yucky. It's a bad texture. It just doesn't feel good. When you put anything underneath it, a metal spatula underneath to pick something up, it's just coarse and just rough, and it just doesn't have a really good experience. This has changed the game when it comes to experience, and I'm really happy with it. So I would say an absolute win. If you want the results of a high-end pan and you don't want to spend the money on a high-end pan, go this route. It'll work out great. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks so much.